Welcome back to the podcast where we bring you stories of terrible things that have happened. And then we delve into the astrology of that terrible thing to try to figure out why bad things happen. Important note, this podcast talks about a lot of traumatizing things. So if that is not your vibe at this current time in your life, no worries. Just don't listen to us. I'm your host, Carly Heath, and I'm a writer in Los Angeles. And I'm here with our new co-host, Emily Simile, a teacher and TikToker who single-handedly revived this podcast with her Astrology of Terrible Things TikTok series, which can be found on her TikTok at Emily Simile, Emily spelled with an I-E instead of a Y. And also joining us is Dinah-Maria Campos, a spirit oracle whose work is grounded in a lifelong relationship with San Francisco and Lake Tahoe, and who's born a few days before me, actually. Dinah-Maria's cosmic T with DMC translates complexity into clarity. Welcome, Dinah-Maria.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Dinah-Maria can be found on Instagram at Divinely Me by DMC. I have talked before on this podcast about why talking about terrible things is important. So I'd like to hear from you guys, Emily and Dinah-Maria. What is your relationship to terrible things like? Why do you think it's worth talking about terrible things in astrology?
As a Cancer Mars myself, I'm very conflict avoidant, but I'm very interested in learning about history in general, and a lot of history is bad and a lot of history is good. I don't know. I think because bad things happen, we should talk about it. We should learn from it. There's always things to learn from. I don't know where I was going with that, but I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Dinah-Maria?
I am a Cancer Mars as well. That's interesting, Emily.
Ooh.
Yeah, eighth house. And so as a child, I was terrified of terrible things like that I would either see on the news or on shows like America's Most Wanted. At my house, the TV was on like almost all the time. And I worried constantly that like someone might be kidnapped or murdered or some other tragedy would strike, especially a family member. And then as my own life continued to unfold, I was literally confronted with terrible thing after terrible thing. And I just had to, basically, I chose to alchemize that fear and turn it into courage. And then that for me turned into really deep seeking and asking questions like, why did my friend die the way she did? Or why was my dad almost murdered? Or why did my ex-husband do that? Like not in a blaming, pointing fingers way, but in a, like, I need to have deeper meaning around this situation in order to find some sort of closure type of way.
I like that as well.
I just realized something. All three of us have Mars in signs ruled by the luminaries, because my Mars is in Leo. Your Marses are in Cancer. Isn't that fascinating?
That's very interesting. I feel like I actually have a lot of Leo Mars people around me.
Yeah. We're all about shedding light on the Mars bad thing. Interesting. As we're recording this right now, we are going through a Mars in Capricorn transit where Mars is exalted. So I want to hear from you all. What's been the most Mars in Capricorn thing that's happened for you recently?
Well, Capricorn rules my 11th house. And then I have Saturn in my 3rd house. So I've been writing a lot for this podcast and like doing a lot of work and stuff, related to like social media. And it's been very fun. I love the 11th house. And I don't know, I haven't always loved Capricorn placements. I don't have any planets in Capricorn. So I think that I grew up, especially as a Gemini sun, Pisces rising, you could probably understand. As a kid, especially, I was like, ugh, Capricorn. But I definitely, person. Oh yeah, I've definitely, come to love it though, because gosh, I need a little earth in my life.
What about you, Dinah-Maria?
For me, one of the most vivid Mars and Capricorn themes has been just through my role as a mom. Capricorn rules my second house. And both of my boys were born with Pluto and Capricorn. So when we have transits like this happening, I feel it really deeply, really personally, because I carry my boys' charts in my heart. And so like recently I had an especially intense situation with one of them, and Capricorn rules his 8th house, and the energy was like heavy and emotionally charged. But in real time, I could literally see that Mars was conjunct his Pluto. And like I could feel in my body like the pressure dynamics, the intensity. But like I understood it, like not just emotionally, but also astrologically. And that for me helps in real time, just stay calm, be able to respond in an aligned way, a helpful way. And I will say that's when times like that are when my Libra stellium also come online big time, because they really help diffuse the situation and just focus on like the harmony. But yeah, I think for me, that's one of the most powerful gifts in astrology, that these charts like will literally just pop up in real time as situations are unfolding. And for me, with my children, being a single mama, I have quite a bit of examples of that. So
yeah, Capricorn's my 4th house, which is where you live and also like the past. And so where I live, I've just had like random little things that need fixing. My like mirrored medicine cabinet thing started coming loose, and then my light in my kitchen started blinking. And so I had to call my manager of this apartment complex and be like, can you fix these things? Which is then bringing a man into my apartment, which I genuinely don't like to have.
Mars in the Mars in the 4th house.
Yeah. I don't like to have men in my living space at all. So it is a little bit like he's a nice guy, but you know, I just don't. I don't want a man in my house. I don't want a man in my house. So the fixing things. And also my little cats have just gone crazy with their scratchies, and they've scratched up like this little thing behind me here. And so I have to fix it. I have to put like little things up to obscure the scratches, which is very Mars in my house. I am going to now share with you all a chart of something that happened and have you guess the terrible things. Talk about the delineations that you see. I've removed all the identifying data.
Ooh, 1st degree Aries chart.
For the podcast audience, what we're looking at is a night chart. With Aries is the 1st house. Mars then, which is the ruler of Aries, is in the 8th house. By the way, my first chart I showed was a 12th house chart ruler. This is my first 8th house chart ruler. And I have a few more charts that I'll share in future episodes that are all 8th house. So it's really interesting that we should keep a tally one of these days of all the where the ascendant ruler is in each of our charts that we share. But this is an 8th house ruled chart ruled by a retrograde Mars in the 8th house in Scorpio. So Mars is the final both Mars and Mercury actually have kind of final dispositor status because they're both in their home signs. But being that this is a night chart, we look for the most malefic planet, and that is Saturn in the 9th. And it's a retrograde Saturn in the 9th, which is Sagittarius, which the moon had just recently passed that Saturn. And so that moon is about 3 degrees ahead of Saturn. The most benefic planet is a pretty well dignified Venus in the 4th house, which is Cancer. And that is where Venus is exalted. And other planets, we have Jupiter in the 6th house, this is the second time I've had Jupiter in the 6th house in one of the charts I've shared on this episode, on this podcast, moving in close to the North Node, which is also in the 6th house. Mercury is opposing the sun in the 3rd house. Not opposing the sun, opposing the moon and Saturn in the 3rd house. Outer planets, Uranus is in the 1st house. Neptune is in the 12th house. Pluto is in the 10th house in Capricorn. Did I go through everyone? And the sun is in the 3rd house. in Gemini. Both Mercury and the Sun are co-present in Gemini in the third house. So what are some delineations that you are thinking of for a chart that looks like this?
Well, I was way off on my first analysis, but I think we're going to get better as we go.
I think you got some really good keywords on the first episode.
That we'll stick to some good keywords too. So with the Aries first house being ruled by the
retrograde
Mars, yeah, in the 8th house. I mean, it seems like there's going to be a lot of action happening and like defensive action, like with it being in Scorpio, related to like the 8th house topics. So death, other people's finances. I also associate it a lot with I associate sex and sexuality more with the 5th house, but like the 8th house is also like taboos and like things that people want to keep secret. People would rather not talk about it, which is also kind of other people's finances, right? So definitely there's like action happening here, but with it being in Scorpio, it feels like it's very defensive. It's like scared. And it's retrograde too. So it's kind of maybe it's even like, I don't know, but it seems like, there's definitely action happening there. And then I'm going to the greatest malefic of the chart, the Saturn and Sagittarius in the 9th house, conjunct the moon, being ruled by that Virgo Jupiter in the 6th house. I'm getting religious vibes. I don't know, like some sort of religious community possibly, because also that Jupiter is being ruled by the Mercury in Gemini in the 3rd house. And we have this grand cross and all the mutable signs. This is very interesting. I don't know. I'm getting some sort of like religious sort of thing, maybe some sort of religious sacrifice, violence, some sort of thing like that. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm going.
What are your thoughts on the Mercury in the 3rd house?
This is like
opposing the Saturn, moving into an opposition with the Saturn, and the moon has just finished its conjunction with Saturn.
Ooh, what if there's some sort of reveal with some sort of religious institution and like this community is like talking about it? I don't know. I don't know.
Dinah-Maria, what delineations do you see?
There's a number of things that immediately stand out. First, I see that Mars in the 8th house is making a quincunx to Uranus and Aries. So it feels like something intense, deep, psychological, sudden, shocking, surprising. With regards to Mercury in the 3rd, I feel like it involves children, school, potentially higher education. It's interesting to see that we were about to have a full moon maybe within a day of this. So this happened maybe a day before. Full moons are more intense. People in general get more chaotic, whether or not they believe in astrology. It feels like restriction because of that Saturn. Maybe, like those involved were potentially restricted in some way. It's interesting to see.
Maybe like, I'm so sorry. With you talking about the higher education, I was like, what if it's like some sort of restriction of like some sort of like activism? Because I'm also looking at the Jupiter and Virgo in the 6th house sort of thing. I don't know, but like college students, I love that. Like the themes of education. I didn't even think about that, but that's so Gemini Sagittarius axis in the 3rd and the 9th house. Like that's so, okay. And keep going.
Yeah, I feel that there was a lot of confusion because we have Neptune in Pisces, really close to the South Node, and in the 12th house, just feels like a lot of fog. Like they're not entirely certain what happened. And I know Jupiter doesn't love to be in Virgo, but it is alongside the North Node. As you mentioned, right? That's important to note that. And
it's Jupiter in a day chart, so it's not as helpful.
No, it's a night chart. This is a night chart.
Oh, sorry. I meant night chart. I had night. Yeah, sorry.
This is
I'm going to say the wrong words all the time.
Night chart Jupiter debilitated in the 6th house.
Yeah, so it's like not as helpful as Jupiter wants to be.
It debilitated in addition to being in the 6th house, in addition to being in the night chart.
And that Jupiter, is it squaring? Yeah, it looks like it's squaring that moon.
And the Saturn.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And I wonder if like
And
her health is, like illness or health. Is there anything related to that too? Like within this community? I don't know.
Maybe let's play a game. You can ask me 5 questions and I will reply yes or no.
Oh, okay. Did more than one person die?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm curious about Venus conjunct the IC in Cancer. That feels very motherly, nurturing. Were mothers involved?
Ooh.
In that people that die have a mother, and the mother is affected. Yes.
This also, maybe since it's conjunct, it's also like with the 4th house, it could maybe be like a pretty place that this happens in. I don't know. Like in a home also,
Yes.
just like specifically.
I would say yes, a pretty home.
Okay. Interesting.
Did we do 3 questions? That's 3 so far. So you have 2 more questions. I can answer yes or no.
Is this related to higher education?
No.
Oh, I loved that. I was like, oh, you're onto something there.
I do feel children were involved. Can I ask, were children involved?
What would the cutoff point for child? I would say, think of another 3rd house signification that would be more relevant than a young person, but an adult young person,
like students.
And driving.
Kind of, drivers. Yeah, like transportation. This is also.
I will say yes, driving is involved.
Ooh, especially with Mercury in the 3rd house, like just like movement in general. Okay, is that all of our questions that we can ask? Yeah. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, no more questions. So now I would say give your maybe 5 to 10 top delineations that you think this is related to.
We haven't talked about Pluto retrograde in Capricorn.
In the 10th house.
In the 10th, yeah. I feel like that's important, especially because it's making a sextile to the South Node, right? It's trining the North Node.
Yeah.
So
I associate the 10th house with like governments and like authority figures, and Pluto in general is very much about power, and with it being in Capricorn, like power structures. And then we would go to the 9th house with the Saturn in the 9th house there. So like, I do feel like there's religious structures involved here and some sort of reveal happening where like maybe a church or a religious institution is saying that it's doing more than it actually is. But also if moving and driving is involved, then I don't know. Then now I'm like, okay, but the 9th house is also like imports and exports and trade and things like that. So I don't know.
That 0-degree vertex is catching my attention as well, directly opposing the ascendant, ruled by that Venus in Cancer in the 4th.
What does the vertex mean to you? It's not a point I tend to focus on very much. So I'm very interested.
Yeah, I make it a point to, whenever possible, track the exact minute a potential thing happened, because the vertex moves so quickly throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And inevitably, every single time, no matter what it is, it hits a pertinent planet in my chart. And even my family and my friends will text me and be like, hey, this particular thing happened at this time, because they have seen the power of it as well. It really answers so many questions that you otherwise potentially wouldn't. Yeah. So I always look out for that. But it's interesting to see that is squaring that Venus in the 4th house, because you talked about how it happened, whatever this was, involved a nice home.
You should tell us.
Okay, are you ready? I just want to give you enough time to say all the things. So you said some words that were right. A reveal. I think you might have gotten too pulled off by religion, because religion and higher education did not have anything to do with this. But institutions in a way, do, vehicles do, and discovering something, discovering a death had happened. This is the chart of a very tragic event. This is the chart for when young actor Anton Yelchin's friends discovered his body after he had died in a freak accident. They find him on June 19th, 2016 at around between 1 a.m. and 1:10 a.m. in the morning, after his car had rolled backward down his driveway, trapping and pinning him against the pillar of the gate to his home. And He was found by his friends who were concerned when he'd missed a rehearsal, and he was pronounced dead immediately at the scene. He was 27. So this was close to his Saturn return, and he was in a fourth house perfection year. We don't know. I don't have a timed birth chart from him, but fourth house being home, him passing away at home during a freak accident. And the way that the institutions and the law come into it is that his parents then sued the car company because there was a defect in the vehicle that caused it to be in neutral instead of park. And that's what caused it to roll down the hill without him seeing it and hitting him and killing him. And you can see the idea of being hit by a car with Mercury opposing Saturn, the Mercury going forward. And whenever Mercury hits that opposition with Saturn, it stops. And it's that. And the moon being there, he was found several hours after he had died. So I imagine the moon was moving into a conjunction with Saturn, the retrograde Saturn, when he died. Let me share with you his life story. Very sad, very sudden, tragic accident. And, a young, beautiful actor who was beloved by many. So a very dignified Venus, in his death chart, and his fans and his parents, I think it was his parents, but they made his grave at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. It's this huge statue of him, and his fans constantly put flowers there and little trinkets and things. So it's a very vibrant grave site. Now let's take a look at his life. So Anton Yelchin was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, March 11th, 1989. And 1989 was a pivotal year for the Soviet Union. The revolutions of 1989, starting in Poland and Hungary, would end communism in Europe's Eastern Bloc. This was the same year as the Tiananmen Square protests, which resulted in many deaths and the imprisonment of pro-democracy activists. Eventually, on November 9th of that year, sections of the Berlin Wall would be breached, leading to the fall of the wall and the opening of the Iron Curtain. But on March 11th, 1989, before all that happened, Anton Viktorovich Yelchin is born in Leningrad in the Soviet Union, which is now called St. Petersburg, Russia, to a Russian Jewish family. His mother and father are champion figure skaters and celebrities in the Soviet Union. They spend 15 years of their lives as stars of the Leningrad Ice Ballet. And though they're ranked third in the nation for ice skating, they're forbidden from going to the Olympics because they are Jewish. And as you can imagine, Russian Jews had a complex and challenging relationship with their home country. As the Soviet Union is crumbling, Russian Jews face a wave of anti-Semitic attacks. So, Anton Yelchin's parents decide to sell everything they own, which leaves them with $8,000 to move to the U.S. When asked the main reason they decided to leave at that point, they said because of their son, Anton, their only son. Anton is only 6 months old when his parents moved to Los Angeles. And in December of that year, Irina Yelchin, the mother, gives an interview to the LA Times about her upcoming performance at Knott's Berry Farm's Festivals on Ice. In that interview, she mentions that her infant son, Anton, is already getting attention. She says, "A woman came up to me, saw Anton, and said, 'He's beautiful. He will be an actor.'" And he has a close relationship with his parents, grows up fluent in English and Russian, and his father introduces him to his love of film, starting with the movie Taxi Driver. Yelchin begins pursuing acting at the age of 7, but when he's just 8 years old, doctors diagnose Yelchin with cystic fibrosis, a genetic disorder that requires intensive treatments and leads to breathing problems and digestive issues. Most cystic fibrosis people only live to be 30s, 40s. They die very young. And so his parents decide to keep this diagnosis a secret from him throughout his childhood. They continue helping their son pursue his acting career. And in 1999, Yelchin is deeply affected by the shooting at Columbine High School and writes a letter to President Bill Clinton. And Clinton actually replies on January 5th, 2000, saying, "Thank you for sharing your thoughts about the recent shootings in our nation's schools. Like all Americans, I've been deeply shocked and saddened by these tragic incidents of gun violence. It is difficult to understand what could make young people do such terrible things. I believe that everyone deserves schools that are safe and secure. As your president, I am working with members of Congress and your state and local leaders to find ways to prevent future incidents from occurring. While we do this, you can help us by communicating with your parents, teachers, and friends about your concerns and your ideas for making things better. It is also very important that you stay focused on your schoolwork. Together, we can create a safe and brighter future for everyone." And as you know, that did not happen because school shootings continued to be a major problem throughout the next 2 decades. But Yelchin's return address is on that letter. He lived in a very fancy house with his parents. It's now estimated to be worth $2.7 million. It's a huge, beautiful 3-story mansion in Sherman Oaks. But soon after that letter from Bill Clinton, Yelchin's acting career would begin. And when reviewing casting tapes for Hearts in Atlantis, director Scott Hicks names Anton Yelchin his top choice to play 11-year-old Bobby Garfield. Hicks then brings Yelchin to Charleston, South Carolina, where Anthony Hopkins is filming Hannibal, and he reads with Anthony Hopkins. And Anthony Hopkins is very impressed with Anton Yelchin and agrees that this is the boy they want to cast for the film. And during filming, though Anthony Hopkins insists that Yelchin call him Tony, the young actor refuses, and Yelchin always addresses him as Sir Anthony because of who he is. And he says, "You can't call someone that I've seen ever since I was a little kid, Tony." So while working, Anton Yelchin and Anthony Hopkins have long conversations talking about Hamlet. They swap Shakespeare quotes, and the 11-year-old makes his feature film debut when the film releases September 28th, 2001, just 7 days after 9/11. And this young child's first press tour with a movie that he is a lead in is all about addressing 9/11 and what it's like to have a movie come out just weeks after 9/11. And Emily wasn't a conscious individual during 9/11, but no one was going to the movie theaters after 9/11 happened. Everyone was pretty much hunkered down at home, pinned to the news and horrified and scared. And also really, I personally weirded out by the intense patriotism and the lack of ability to question, like, you know, maybe U.S. foreign policy makes other people in other countries angry with us. And maybe we should think about not cause, and this is very relevant, 1989, young man, but also relevant today. Maybe we should think about not causing problems for other countries for no reason, because that makes other countries mad at us. And then people resort to the only means that they have to fight back, which in some cases is terrorism. Yelchin is very emotional, understandably, about the 9/11 attacks. And he's being an immigrant. He believes in the country that his parents decided to move to and has a lot to say about all his feelings about it. And he's very articulate. And he says, "I know a lot of people wouldn't want to come to the movies at this time, but this is a movie that gives you a good feeling," he says. "It's a movie about friendship and about people who love each other." And as a child, Anton Yelchin loves math and reading, but doesn't like ice skating. He plays the guitar, and Anthony Hopkins teaches him Moonlight Sonata. Albert Finney gets him all the Beatles CDs, and he loves the Beatles. And so as you can see from his Venus in Pisces He is definitely an artist of multiple talents. He's very into art of all sorts, and his moon in Taurus, all sorts of art. And
I keep wondering if he's a Pisces rising. I just feel like that would fit. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, it was.
I was literally thinking, and also I thought it was interesting that this happened on June 19th and my birthday is June 20th. And you said it happened around 1:10 a.m. and I was born at 1:09 a.m. So that's very interesting.
oh, wow, amazing.
And then if he's a Pisces rising too, then I'm like, that's too many little coincidences.
That's how astrology is. It always like you find a chart that's like, this chart is very relevant to me, actually. I think he could also be a Taurus rising, because I found Taurus risings to always be very, especially if there's a well-dignified Venus, they're always very beautiful. And Anton Yelchin is very beautiful in a delicate, sort of frail, fairy-like way. And then that would put Venus and the sun in his 11th house, and he had lots of fans. So that kind of,
I think I was initially looking at the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, and I was like, that might make sense for his 4th house, with his parents being athletes, as well as this event happening at home.
Yeah.
And then I was also like, oh, I feel like the moon in the 7th house would make sense for him, with just like all of his hobbies that you were talking about, like him loving to read, and that being like the ruler of his 5th house too, the ruler of the 5th house being in the 3rd. I don't know. I was like, yeah. I've gone in on the Pisces rising. I'm like affirming my own biases, but I definitely, this is so interesting.
And he's born with a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn, which I did not know that when I picked this chart. I was just like thinking a lot about this event, and I was like, this would be a really good one to do for the podcast. And I didn't even think about when he was born or anything. And then I picked up his birth chart, and I'm like, oh, he was born with an exact Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And we're talking about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction here in 2026. That's fascinating.
Wow, I thought you did that on purpose. You're so intuitive.
No. Okay, so during the rest of his child acting career, he has roles in TV miniseries like Taken, the legal drama The Practice, Curb Your Enthusiasm, NYPD Blue, Law and Order, Criminal Minds, all the biggies. And he has a lead role in the 2007 film Charlie Bartlett with Robert Downey Jr., where Anton Yelchin plays a rich kid who becomes the psychiatrist to all the students at his high school. When Yelchin turns 17, his parents finally tell him about his cystic fibrosis diagnosis. And his big break comes in 2009 when he appears in 2 big budget franchise films, Terminator Salvation and his most famous role, Chekhov, in the Star Trek reboot. Throughout his acting career, Anton Yelchin works with top names in Hollywood. Kristen Stewart develops an unrequited crush on him. Through it all, he keeps his cystic fibrosis a secret, waking up early in the morning for his daily breathing treatments. Co-star Simon Pegg says Anton Yelchin was always looking sickly and would cough a lot and take meds, but Simon Pegg didn't think it was anything serious or chronic. People cough, no big deal. He said, Anton and I spent a lot of time talking, like really late at night, and we'd have these big heart-to-heart conversations, but he never mentioned his cystic fibrosis. Yelchin pursues photography in his free time, shooting at sex clubs and other spots in the valley. He calls himself a lurker and would go to sex clubs with friends to just lurk. He relates to outsiders and people on the fringes of society. He writes a screenplay called Travis, which he plans to direct and even secures funding for it, with production set to begin on July 11th. It was a crime thriller set in the lonely landscape of the San Fernando Valley and follows an actor and amateur amateur photographer who witnesses the murder of a young woman after following her back to her apartment. Yelchin had been putting a lot of work into the project, watching 3 films a day for inspiration, providing research and photography to try and figure out the mood and the look of the film. And his collaborator said, "I know for sure that this film was going to reveal the undeniable and indisputable fact that Anton is a very rare and exceptionally gifted artist." And then in the early morning of June 19th, 2016, or likely the night before, June 18th, 2016, Yelchin parked his 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee on a steep hill that led down to his Studio City home. So Studio City is all on a hill. It's very wooded. The houses there are all multi-million-dollar homes. And he had kind of a long driveway that had a fence on either side. And at the bottom was a gate with a mailbox and like a fence post on either side. Then like a little gate that you as an individual would go through. And then the car gate was like at the front, right? And unfortunately, when he got out of the car, it wasn't in park, though it might have felt like it was. It was in neutral. In fact, just a month before, Fiat Chrysler had recalled 1.1 million vehicles, including that Jeep, because customers found the gear shifters problematic, leading to dozens of injuries and more than 2,000 crashes and more than 300 reports of property damage. While Yelchin was walking back towards his house, the car rolled backwards, and before he could move out of the way, it crushed him against a brick mailbox pillar and security fence. His friends found him around 1 a.m., but it was too late. Yelchin had died about a minute after he was hit by his car, and he'd likely died several hours before they found him. The cause of death is listed as blunt traumatic asphyxia, which occurs when severe sudden chest compression, like in a car crash, causes blood to flow backwards into the head and neck due to increased pressure in the veins, leading to distinctive signs like bluish skin, swelling, tiny red spots, and subconjunctival hemorrhages, which is bleeding in the eyes. He was, like I said, likely dead several hours before he was found. Zachary Quinto, who played Spock in the Star Trek reboot, called Yelchin one of the most open and intellectually curious people I have ever had the pleasure to know. And a month later, Anton's parents sue Fiat Chrysler, and in 2018, they reach a confidential settlement, and the company states that they're pleased to have reached an amicable solution and resolution to the matter. And they continue to extend our deepest sympathies to the Yelchin family for their tragic loss. In his short life, Anton Yelchin acted in 69 projects. An exhibit of his photography entitled Anton Yelchin Provocative Beauty showed posthumously at New York City's DeBuck Gallery in January 2018. And in 2019, the documentary Love Antosha, which is all about Anton's life and his struggle with cystic fibrosis, played at the Sundance Film Festival. And you can watch it on many places online, including on Tubi for free. His parents create the Anton Yelchin Foundation and donate $1 million to the USC Center for Cystic Fibrosis. And that is a very tragic story and too short life of Anton Yelchin, who is most famous as playing Chekhov in the Star Trek reboot.
I still remember how devastating that was. It literally, when I parked on a hill, I still remember him and how tragic that was. Like, it was one of those, at least for me, that got imprinted in the psyche.
Yeah. Just a freak accident. And I'm really interested in his birth chart because of, so many things, the Mars-Jupiter conjunction and the exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune and the exact square of Mars and Mercury and Jupiter and Mercury.
And interesting how you had the chart for the incident set for an Aries rising, because you talked about that head trauma and Aries rules ahead and being there.
And it was a close call because it said that the time was between 1 a.m. and 1:10 a.m. So if I did exactly 1 a.m., it would have been a Pisces rising, which to me didn't seem like that was it. It gives a different vibe being Jupiter ruled. To me, the Mars retrograde in the 8th house, as in finding a dead person after they had died, finding someone who had died in the past, the Mars retrograde, seemed more appropriate. But I'm also open to those who want to look at, exactly 1 a.m., which is like 29 degrees Pisces, if you think that is more accurate too. It could go either way.
And he was going through a nodal reversal as well. Interesting.
Yeah. And you think so much of it was his friends finding him. So like his friends being the Mars and him being the Venus, the Libra 7th house, and the Venus in the 4th house, which is finding him in his home. I feel like that's pretty right on.
Yeah. I like this Aries rising chart.
Yeah.
I do find that it is divinely timed that you spoke about him being born in 1989 and how that reoccurrence transit is going to come up for those born in 1989, not only in the month of January with everything we have coming through Capricorn, but depending on if they were born earlier in 1989, folks would basically be experiencing a square when we have that Saturn-Neptune conjunction go exact on February 20th. And so I think it's something highly important for folks to note if they were born around that period of time.
And you've been talking so much about the 8th graders who have Uranus at 0 degrees of Aries, who are going to have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on their Uranus. And something I was thinking about was there's this grok on Twitter, and there's a lot of AI. When there's photos of anyone, you can reply to it and you can say, Grok, can you show what this person looks like without clothes on? I know it's horrible. And horrible people have been taking child actors like the girl who plays Holly in Stranger Things. And when there's a photo of her that comes up on Twitter, creepy dudes will reply, Grok, show what she looks like in a bikini. And I kind of wonder if a lot of 8th graders are going to be dealing with, just like the predators now, they can exploit kids with a click of a button. I mean, not even just like doing anything. They can just use AI a kid is posting on Instagram for the first time, and they can just use AI to basically sexually assault that kid.
That's devastating. I had that not occurred to me, that manifestation, but yes, certainly I could feel that. For me, I was particularly looking at like anyone who's a Virgo rising, having Aries ruling their 8th house, just how that might manifest. There's other stories you've discussed on your podcast about examples of that.
Yeah. Like just terrible accidents that can happen. Yeah. Oh gosh, you 1989 people are, luckily the 1989 Saturn-Neptune conjunction happened at 12 degrees Capricorn. And this one's going to be at 0 degrees Aries. So it's not an exact square, but it is a whole sign square.
One thing that's particularly important to note, though, is depending when in 1989 they were born, they had Uranus at 0 or 1 degree of Capricorn. So that certainly will be squared.
Oh my God. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know somebody born in August. Yeah, that has a 1 degree Uranus.
I think this is still on the topic of 1989, but kind of going in a different direction. But Taylor Swift was also born in 1989, and theirs has been a lot of stuff happening with her. Yeah. I definitely think, and she's also speculated to be a Capricorn rising. I feel like that chart really fits for her. I mean, things have been building up for her, so I don't know.
I wonder, if she gets married during the good astrology of June. And then as the astrology gets bad, she realizes she doesn't want a man in her house.
I was thinking the same thing because she got engaged during June, right? The Venus-Jupiter conjunction?
Yeah, Venus-Jupiter conjunction.
And this Cancer-Jupiter, everybody's getting engaged.
Yeah. And then I feel like once Jupiter goes into Leo, people are going to be like, what did I do? Oh God.
I also think with Taylor Swift specifically, it's actually interesting because one of the terrible events that I looked at was on my TikTok was when Kanye West interrupted her speech at the VMAs. And that was at 0 degree Capricorn, right at the beginning of her career, Pluto, Capricorn, Pluto, 0 degree, right at the beginning of her career. And now that Pluto has moved into Aquarius, I don't know, she's steadily been like accruing a lot of power and a lot of wealth. And I'm very interested to see how that changes with Pluto and Aquarius, because I really do, if she's a Capricorn rising as well, finances. I mean, what's going to happen there? Is she going to maintain her billionaire status? Is she going to lose it? I don't know. Very interested to, love how I got from 1989 to we were talking about serious stuff, and then I got Taylor Swift in there. But
it's all relevant. It's all relevant. Aquarius being the sign that's outside of the traditional structure and the sign of the unhoused and the outsiders. I wonder if it would be great if Taylor Swift is like, I'm going to give away some of my wealth to help.
That would be really good. I feel like hopefully, if anything, she'll do that for her image. She's like tired of people calling her an unethical billionaire. So she's like, okay, I'll give enough of my wealth away so that I'm not a billionaire anymore and people stop hating on me.
And that square will be from her first to her fourth, right? Aries rules her fourth.
If she's a Capricorn rising.
Yeah. Very interesting.
We will see. Okay. So thank you guys so much for being part of this episode. And I want you all to find Emily Simile on TikTok at Emily Simile, Emily with an IE, and find Dinah-Maria on Instagram at Divinely Me by DMC. Thank you guys for being a part of this. Everyone be sure to be subscribed to the Astrology of Terrible Things so you can be notified whenever we drop a new episode. And I have cats that I've rescued that have been very expensive and cost a lot of medical bills. So I'm also putting a GoFundMe to raise money for my rescue animals. So if you have $5, drop it in the GoFundMe at the link below. That would be a big help. Until next time, don't be afraid of terrible things, learn from them, and maybe also be a little terrible yourself.
Stay terrible.
Bye.